97.3 ESPN.com for all your Flyers news, at Dave G. Isaac on Twitter, where the Flyers will go with Michael Neuvirth, I believe, for the 5th time in 6 games. Dave, as he's played well enough, has he kind of wrestled that spot away? They just sticking with the hot hand now with Michael Neuvirth yet again.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the case here. Dave Hakstol has been burned twice when kind of giving a backing to either one of the goaltenders and saying he's the guy. So I don't think he wants to say it, but I think that's the case right now. That Michael Neuvirth's the starting goaltender until he either gets hurt again or allows 5 goals in consecutive games or something like that. He seems to be the guy right now. He's in a groove, and the Flyers are going to keep riding him.
Yeah, 9-5-1. It's 2.67. He's he's played pretty well. When you stack the two guys up next to each other, has Neuvirth outplayed Mason for the most part when healthy?
Yeah, I think so when healthy, and especially the whole game is about what have you done for me lately, right? So since he returned from a knee injury on January 4th, Neuvirth has a 193 goals against and 927 save percentage. That's pretty good for any team. So that's good enough. And Steve Mason's numbers were above 3 goals against and 885 save percentage or something in that neighborhood. So, when they're both healthy, Michael Neuvirth is certainly the more athletic and probably the more talented of the two goalies. I don't think there's much of a question about that. But both of these guys, it's about consistency level. For Neuvirth, it's about the consistency of his health mainly. And for Mason, it's the consistency of his play.
Flyers tonight in Calgary, right after the Sixers. We'll have that game on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, give us some evidence that the Flyers are about to score some goals on this trip.
Well, the first thing that they need to do is continue playing well defensively, because they're not going to blow away teams with their offense anymore, I don't think. So they still need to be able to hold their opponents, to minimal goals against and minimal shot attempts. But the Flyers' shot attempts at 5-on-5 is since January 1st, I believe, 5th in the league. So they're getting opportunities. When they say that, it sounds like one of the biggest cliches in sports. So I went to try and make sure that it was actually correct, and it is. Because, these guys say things that are just cliche after cliche, and there's not necessarily evidence of it. In this case, there is. So as long as they can keep putting these shot attempts on, but shot attempts are shots on goal, shots that they take that get blocked, and missed shots. And I think a large percentage of those are missed shots. So they still need to find the net, find the actual net. But I think that they're not terribly far off. And that's a promising sign if you're looking forward here.
Yeah, what'd you think of Wheel when he came up and what he added?
Well, it was just the one game, but I think that there's just a world of difference from last year, where it's kind of like asking a goalie to come in cold in the middle of a game. Jordan Wheel hadn't played when the Flyers acquired him in that Vinny LeCavalier, Luke Shen trade with LA. I think that was early December, and he never really got an opportunity. He had been sitting up in the press box, not playing. The fact that he started the year in the American Hockey League, was an AHL All-Star. His game has been really rolling these days. I think that definitely helped his cause in terms of coming up and making an impact. And he's only had 15 games in the NHL, still doesn't have a point. But last game, I think he played very well. And again, that's a very small sample size. We'll see what happens here over the course of this road trip and going forward. But he definitely has the skill set, and that's what fans were wanting to see. But there's just a big difference in last year, a guy who's sitting there not having played in the NHL for a month or more, to a guy now who's still not played in the NHL, but has been dominating the American League. I think he's second in the league in points.
Dave Isaac at Dave G. Isaac with the Flyers and Calgary tonight. They were about right where they are right now at this point last year, and they really started to play well. Do they understand that that's similar? They're going to have to go on a similar streak here. I mean, when you do all, they got 26 games, you kind of look at the games played and at hand and all that stuff. How's the math kind of add up for them to be a playoff team? Does it look less likely to make the playoffs than it does likely?
I would say it's still less likely that they make it than it is likely. Excuse me. But last year they had to start on such a torrid pace so early that it was kind of around late December, early January. So we're about a month into that now, and they still haven't found that consistent level. They're not winning 4 games in a row and then losing one in overtime or losing 2 in a row and one of them is a shootout loss or something like that. They're still very inconsistent. The play, in terms of their results anyway, their play has been rather consistent, and they can stand there and say we deserved a better effort or a better result rather here or there. If they don't have it in the standings, it doesn't really matter. So I think that they need to probably go on a pace that's even a little bit faster, a little bit better than last year if they're going to make it. I know that they're very close, but like you mentioned, those games in hand for other teams, that distorts the picture a little bit there.
Dave Hakstol on the Bovada odds for fired coaches, 22-1. He kind of put that in there after Julian got fired and then hired a week later. But do you see Hakstol on the hot seat?
I would not recommend anybody put down against those 22-1 odds. He's here for a while. The Flyers knew, Ron Hextall knew. Ron Hextall and Paul Holmgren are absolutely in charge of this franchise. And Ron Hextall probably a little bit more so, even though Paul Holmgren's got the bigger title. I think Ron Hextall pulls more strings in terms of hockey operations. And part of his plan was to have Dave Hakstol here long enough to see more growth from their young players, and they're not there yet. I know there's a lot of concern about the core that the Flyers have now and how many coaches they've gone through and how they haven't necessarily made strides. And I absolutely buy into that argument. But that doesn't mean that they're going to cut his time short because of it. I think they're waiting for these young defensemen to come up, more of them. They don't have as many forward prospects, but the ones that they do have, they're probably going to wait on them a little bit. And then Dave Hakstol will have some time. It's a little bit like Brett Brown with the Sixers. They expected those first couple of years to be painful. The Flyers made the playoffs the first year under Dave Hakstol. This year, we'll see. I would give it a less than 50-50 chance, but that doesn't mean that he's not their long-term coach.
All right. This is an interesting trip, these 3 Canada games, and, being out west, we'll see. Not a great homestand, 2-1. And what are they in the 9th spot right now? Right? They're tied with Toronto, but Toronto has less games.
Well, Toronto won last night, so now they're 2 back of Toronto, and Toronto has 1 game in hand. So that's what I mean when I say that the picture looks a little bit distorted. It looked a lot better last night than it does today after Toronto beats up on the Islanders 7-1.
And this kind of goes, Dave, to when I know Hextall is a little boring, a little monotone sometimes, but he's always talking about how important the 2 points are instead of these games where they go into overtime and they get the 1. It is when they have these chances to get the 2, it is so imperative that they get them, especially at this time of the year.
Yeah, I mean, if he was hired to be an entertaining quote, he would have been fired a long time ago. But if he's looking to be an effective coach and try and keep them even keeled, then yeah, because you see them win a huge game every once in a while, and you don't see that elation that you would expect for a team that had been struggling, and then all of a sudden gets this big win that could pump up their confidence. He is very much trying to keep them even keeled, whether it's after a terrible loss or after an inflating win.
Dave Isaac with the Flyers in Calgary tonight. That game will be on 97.3 ESPN right after Sixers and Celtics. At Dave G. Isaac. Thanks, pal.
Thanks for having me.